If the original Legend of Zelda was released today, I believe it would be praised as a fantastic search action game that absolutely fumbles its ending. So let's travel back 40 years to 1986 and press restart on the original Legend of Zelda. And we're gonna answer one simple question: how does it hold up today? The Zelda franchise and I honestly have a pretty long history. I've been playing Legend of Zelda games for as long as I can remember, but yet there's a stain on my record. I have never played through the original. Honestly, I can't even remember trying it. I can't remember ever seeing the old man and getting my sword. So that means to set expectations, I have to think about the era that I'm pulling from here. This is an era where the home console has just started. There's going to be a lot of arcade ports, there's going to be a lot of cheap tricks, and there's going to be a lot of arbitrary session extenders. I'm expecting to be frustrated, I'm expecting for there to be surprises that are just going to be gotcha moments that reset me, and I'm expecting for this to be a bit of a slog. Yet, when I did Google reviews for this game, it's consistently sitting at a 9 out of 10, which is like really good. And as much as I have to take that with a grain of salt because nostalgia is a hell of a drug, it's kind of like a glimmer in the dustpan, right? There's hope here, but I am skeptical. I'm not expecting much. So with expectations set, what are we actually doing in The Legend of Zelda? It's very simple, but it's very satisfying. You are almost existing in an open world, where you are going to go and kill monsters to get rupees, to buy stuff at shops, and find these dungeons. And the dungeons are really the bread and butter, right? When you're in these dungeons, you're basically clearing room to room, unlocking doors, and defeating bosses. Those bosses are going to increase your total health pool, give you a piece of the Triforce, which you need to defeat Ganon. This game plays like a search action game like Metroid or Hollow Knight, more than it would ever play like a traditional Zelda game. When I think of a traditional Zelda game, like more of an Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild, right? This is a search action game at its core, and I think that's really interesting. So I guess right off the bat, we could say that my expectations were wrong. This game is really fun. The level of openness and player discovery and just player agency is something that I would never have dreamed to be in a game from the 80s. So let's break it down. What do I mean by this? Well, the moment that the game starts, you are in a completely open world, and the only logical thing for you to do is explore the cave that's on the same screen as you, and that gives you your sword. And then once you have that sword, you can truly go wherever you want. And it's really interesting because the entire overworld seems to be balanced around the fact that Link has and starts with 3 hearts, right? So when you're going around, the most terrifying enemies on the overworld are going to deal 2 hearts of damage. What that means for you is you can always make one mistake reliably and still overcome the challenge that you're fighting. This leads to honestly a really fun experience where you're just exploring tile by tile and finding hidden rupees, killing enemies, and getting trampled by statues, because of course every statue in this game is a sentient monster. Now, of course, you have to find the dungeons. The dungeons are the core way that you're going to progress. And I'm not going to say that Dungeon 8 is the exact same difficulty as Dungeon 1. That would be disingenuous. But I do think they're kind of broken in half. I think that Dungeons 1 to 4, maybe even 1 to 5, are about the same difficulty, and then Dungeons 6, 7, and 8 are their own beast. And because of that, mostly because I didn't realize that the dungeon number was in the top left-hand corner, I actually cleared the dungeons completely out of order. I found the pogo stick in my first dungeon, and then I went and found the sailboat, and then using the sailboat, I went and just explored. So I ended up clearing the first dungeon 4th, which was honestly a really cool experience that the game first allowed me to do that, and 2, when I did eventually stomp through the first level, it didn't feel that much easier. And I think that's because each dungeon is really smartly designed. They're all self-contained. I can find all of the keys that I need to progress this main dungeon in the dungeon that I'm working on. And that honestly defied my expectations. The moment that I saw that I could buy a key in a shop, I thought I would be routinely grinding rupees to purchase keys to progress through dungeons, but that is something that we can talk about a little later. Because despite all of the praise that I have heaped on so far, I've got to give it one more. This game is really easy to break through and discover all on your own. I found that once you learned the design language of the game, it was just begging you to explore it. Every single dungeon room, I would blow up a bomb in all 4 corners. And granted, I was a little liberal with my bomb usage because I would just rewind to get my inventory back so that I didn't have to seamlessly just walk out of the dungeon and farm it up. But besides that, I found no need to do the rewind. I always knew about where the secrets would need to be because I'd get the dungeon map and see. But the most important secrets to me were the ones that were on the overworld. Stuff like finding an old man who gives you a piece of paper that you take to an old woman who becomes a potion shop for some reason. Or finding a different old woman who gives you the code to walk through the secret forest. Or a different old woman who tells you just to walk straight up the mountain and that's actually the entire secret. All of that felt really good to progress. It was all so self-contained. The only thing that I really don't think I would have ever figured out organically is blowing a whistle to drain a pond. Maybe it's in the instruction manual or something. And I should also note that the game does just feel good to play. It's very simple. All you do is swing sword and block damage, but it felt really satisfying, especially the sword beam. The sword beam just feels kind of great to use. It's a real shame that you have to be just at full health to use it because, you know, I know now that the red potion gives you 2 charges, but being at full health can be rather hard to juggle, so you end up playing rather carefully. I would have liked to have seen it be adjusted to be like the top half of your health bar. I think that would have been a really cool adjustment, but I digress. That's small nitpicking stuff. And now that I have raved for several minutes now about how good the core gameplay loop is and what you're actually doing, I believe you now have all of the context to understand why this game fumbled its ending so hard. So after completing the majority of the overworld and collecting all 8 Triforce pieces, you are going to go and fight Ganon in Death Mountain, and Death Mountain is the 9th and final dungeon. This is honestly just a really big dungeon, and honestly on its own, it would be totally fine if it held the same design principles that every other dungeon in the game did. But it breaks all of the rules that the game has set up for itself to this point. This is the first dungeon that I had to abandon to grind rupees in order to come back with more keys. I had to do that a couple different times. I did learn after beating the game that there's apparently an item that gives you unlimited keys, but again, that is not something that was communicated as something that I would ever think to need to have up until this point. Why would I think I need to go and hunt that down? This final dungeon was also the first time that the crucial game-ending secret is hidden behind something that you would never think to look for. I'm talking, of course, about the silver arrow. For full context, you cannot beat the game unless you shoot Ganon with a silver arrow, and the silver arrow is hidden in the top left-hand corner of the Skull Dungeon. This is the one secret in the game that I cannot find any record of just explaining the secret. Right? Maybe it was in a different dungeon and I missed it. And I'm really curious if you know the answer to this. Please let me know in the comments. But I couldn't find anything that hinted at the fact that you needed to shoot Ganon with a silver arrow. So this did lead to a rather comical situation where I got to Ganon, was beating him senselessly with a sword, and realized that he either had way too much health or there was something else going on here. Again, if there was a precedent where I had to go and find a specific item in the dungeon to defeat the boss, that would make sense, but this defies the language of the game. Every other boss, I guess with the exception being the one that you have to blow a whistle at, dies just by swinging your sword at it enough times. So there was no reason, again, for the game to betray its design philosophy in the last stretch. And I do think that the silver arrow is the biggest offender here because it departs from the design language of both the rest of the game and the dungeon itself. So the dungeon establishes very early on that just because you clear a given screen doesn't mean you're going to get a reward for it. And that sets a tone. It says, okay, I can clear every single screen, and when I do, I'll get rewarded, or maybe there'll just be nothing. What it does not incentivize you to do is to push the third block from the right of a column to reveal a secret staircase. Again, no secret on the overworld. If it would have said like, hey man, in the skull chip in the temple of this skull room, you should push some boulders, or like there's a secret there, then I would think to look there. The only secret that I could find is there's a secret in the eye of the dungeon, and I went there and found my secret, but there was nothing to talk about the temple. And that being said, the entire Ganon boss fight is also a bit of a mess. He turns invisible, throws stuff at you, and it's just kind of a bad time where you're waggling your sword in the general direction until you hit him 4 times and shoot him with a silver arrow. But every other boss, as simple as they were, was a good time. Not necessarily a hard time, but you always knew what you were fighting and the pattern was obvious. Ganon teleporting in a circle as an invisible blob that you eventually just kind of make contact with made for an anticlimactic and very frustrating final battle. With that being said, you do roll credits and then it says that a second quest is starting, and I'll give this game props where it's due. An entire second game in my first game. That's not something you hear a lot of. But what was my biggest surprise ended up also being one of my biggest disappointments. Just because, again, what I really loved about this game was exploring the open world and discovering all of these different secrets that all felt that I could get there and discover them on my own. The second quest introduces completely hidden pathways that you can realistically only find by just pixel hugging and eventually breaking through to find these different ones. There is an exception to this, and again, when the game is working, it works really well. There's an old man that tells you where the secret item shop is, and I was able to find the secret item shop by following that hint. But in a dungeon, it took away a lot of the joy of discovery when I would bomb a wall, have nothing happen, but when I ran into that wall, then all of a sudden I'm clipping through it. I honestly thought it was a glitch the first time that it happened. This took away that feeling of joy and discovery that carried the entire first quest for me and turned it into I guess I better bash my noggin against every pixel to find a secret. Completely different. Same end result of finding a secret, but the way that you feel smart when you discover it organically versus that you feel like you're just grinding out pixels when you're doing it by, well, bashing and grinding out pixels, it's completely night and day. Yet, despite how hard the game fumbles that last 10%, it's the core 90% of the game that is honestly really, really fun. I had a fantastic time playing it. For full context, this is a game that I was playing on my treadmill for about 30 to 40 minutes a day while I was walking, and it was one of the few treadmill games that I pick up that I really wanted to play outside of treadmill time. It was calling me to play it in my real free time, and that is a powerful sentiment. It was a game that wanted me to come back and play it, and I was compelled to do so. I do obviously think that the game would be dramatically improved if it had easier access to that sword beam and that the secrets were a little bit easier in that final dungeon to discover organically. But overall, it absolutely crushed my expectations and delivered an experience that feels well beyond its time. So if you're looking for a solid search action game and you aren't turned off by the ending that I described and all of the frustration that I had there, I would in good faith recommend the original Legend of Zelda to you. At least give the first quest a try and see what you think. So let me know, what do you think of the original Legend of Zelda? Does it hold up in your eyes, or is it, getting a little rough around the edges? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.